various practices, I think we can go beyond. I mean, fasting, I've proved that to myself already, that I can sustain myself without food and water. And so
What was your longest stint on that one?
I've done 61 hours on dry fast, which is nothing.
Wow.
And then and I've done.
Welcome to the Consciousness of the Way. I am your humble servant and Sifu, Taoist Master Sun Quinn, and I have a phenomenal guest here today. I'm very excited about bringing my new friend on the podcast. He has a very unique insight into all things wellness, mental, emotional, physical, and I really find his perception, his way that he delivers his material really refreshing to just personally myself, but I think just to the whole wellness industry. Welcome, my dear friend, Troy Casey. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, and thank you so much for having me on. I'm grateful to be here.
Yes, I'm just really excited. It's really refreshing to have someone like yourself involved in the space of wellness per se, and it's not generally to one thing. You're so multifaceted from everything, all the work that you're putting out in relation to the health and wellness community. It's huge. But I'm not going to speak any more on that. I'd love you to share with the audience your background, what you do, what you're sharing, and let's get into this.
Yeah, so I started studying natural medicine, juicing, herbs, fasting about 33 years ago. I was in Milan, Italy. I was a fashion model at the time, and I just really wanted to know how to take care of myself in front of the camera and look and feel my best. And so I got into fasting and herbs early on, and I really liked that experience because I came from the typical American upbringing. I really didn't know anything, right? And so so I got into nutrition and the modeling industry. There's a lot of drugs and alcohol, so I got pretty heavily into partying. I lived in Miami Beach in the 90s, and
that would have been exciting. You must have some stories.
It was very exciting. I mean, I love all aspects of my life, and I've had some pretty powerful experiences. But Miami was incredible. I really enjoyed my time down there, but I got a little carried away with my partying. So in the late 90s, I moved to Los Angeles to start a career in acting, and I knew I couldn't do it as a drunk, and so I sobered up, and I found my way to Vipassana meditation. And I sat 11 10-day courses in silence, right? So about 111 days total, and that revolutionized my consciousness. It shifted me, and from there I found some Maori healers from New Zealand, indigenous healers, very powerful myofascial release and kind of spiritual, emotional healing through the physical body. And I witnessed miracles, and I witnessed really what the human body could handle. They stepped on my head, and they're 300 pounds, and they stepped on the back of my calves, and I was in a full body sweat within a split second. And so I witnessed and experienced very profound healing with them. Soon after that, somebody turned me on to a company, an herbal company in the Amazon rainforest, using rainforest botanicals. And these plants were extremely powerful as well. Kind of like the Chinese methodology of herbalism. Yet this wasn't written down. It was handed, teacher to student by word of mouth. And the Shipibo Indians were our vendors with the company. And I ended up drinking ayahuasca with them and studying a lot of the herbalism with them and taking the plants really into my body, which raised my frequency and vibration. I had a very powerful experience. And I worked with that company for about 8 years. And then I had a family. I had a three visions when I was in the Amazon drinking ayahuasca the first time. One was an amalgamation of my on-camera career, and I'd been studying natural medicine, and I was doing stand-up comedy at the time. And Certified Health Nut,
Wow.
which is my brand online, came alive in the Amazon rainforest. The second vision I had was of the spirit of my daughter, who's now 12.
Wow.
She came to me in a vision, and I wasn't in a relationship. I wasn't married or anything. And so my family's been unfolding ever since that vision as well. And the final vision that I saw is that humanity makes it from the precipice of disaster we find ourselves, even to this day. And so I came out of the Amazon with some powerful visions, and it was right after the Iraq war started. And I could just really feel the pulse of humanity. And I came out of the jungle, and I started studying kind of the way of the world, globalism. John Perkins wrote a great book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And so the World Bank, the IMF, they loan money to these third world countries, and then they get their natural resources to pay back the loans. They get their natural resources. They get a slave wage of the people to pull it out of the ground. Halliburton and Bechtel gets the actual money from these loans. And so this is kind of the way of the world. And Peru is the number 6 producer of oil in the world. And I was working in Peru at the time. And Ecuador is number 5. Venezuela is number 4. And we've seen what's happened to that country. Iran's number 3. We're always trying to go to war with them. Iraq is number 2. And by that time, and still to this day, we dominate their oil fields. Saudi Arabia is number 1. Libya was number 9. Syria and Afghanistan are about pipelines. And so really understanding the way of the world.
Wow.
and how I was taught in school, and having the vision, knowing that we're going to make it from where we're at right now. And so I took it upon my own mission to raise human consciousness and change all systems. So I'm here to usher in free energy, new farming techniques, education, media, commerce. Everything needs to change. And my vision is clean air, water, soil, and equitable systems for all mankind. So that's my daily work right now that you see on the internet. And I use the histrionics and entertainment and all my experience in front of the camera and as an actor and a comedian to really bring levity to it and get people's attention. And then, I also use my own health. Sex sells is a principle in propaganda that's never going away. And so I like to keep, a healthy body as much as possible, and share the natural principles of life with people. Yeah.
That is amazing. My goodness. I mean, I knew you were multifaceted in many layers, but that's incredible. That's an amazing journey that you've gone on, and you've just got started. Like if I had to look into a crystal ball and be a little bit more particular, and I normally don't do this because, quite frankly, the first time I did a reading on someone and gave them their lifeline, their timeline, they unfortunately died to the second, like 2 months later. It was kind of crazy. But these are the rippling effects of more deeper insight. But I can be very confident when I'm looking at you and looking at the beginning of your reality, that if you don't live a happy, ripe old age of anywhere between 140 and 160, then that's not going to happen. And that sounds so obscure to someone living right now, but not really. You need to understand that we're in a revolution. And when we get deeper into the mind, per se, that people believe is just the be all or end all, which it is, but it's also the jumping off point to consciousness, which is real access. There is no limit to what human potential is when you access that consciousness. So, I feel very, very, very comfortable sharing that with you, and you can take it or leave it. But I mean, that's a great starting point, because you are right here. Whoa. I mean, we have just begun with the incredible insight. And so it's sort of It's interesting when you mention that, Troy. There's so much that I believe I've sort of like got sort of caught up on it recently in the last 24 months, because it's never really been anything of interest to me in relation to how the financial system really works. I've been sort of oblivious to it. I'm just walking the path of the Tao, and you kind of, unfortunately, at some point, the world pushes you into a place where you either inform yourself, or you just become one of the casualties in the process of where the world is sort of revolving or generating to something else. I'm not sure what that is, but I mean, we keep watching it evolve, and there is an evolution. It's not just mankind and we're all just troglodytes, because that's been debunked for quite some time. The cycle of what where human DNA really came from, and how long we've been roaming the earth here in so-called planet Earth.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, that financial stuff sends chills to me, because it really is sort of a wake-up call, and I've sort of just stumbled across it in the last year or two, and I'm like, yes, that is unbelievable that this is really taking place, or how the mechanics of the world really work in relation to, where do you really get your money from? How is everything sort of operated? What's being lubricated to make it real? And so much of it is just, founded on debt. And that's it. That's the reality. None of it's real. I don't know. Maybe that's my infantile viewpoint of it, and I haven't looked too closer. But that's what I got a realization of in the last 24 months.
Yeah, I mean, the money game is very interesting, and I have only recently woken up to that as well. And I intertwine that with manifestation. So I'm here to change the money system eventually, but in the meantime, I require boatloads of the stuff. So.
I love it, brother. I love what you're saying, because it is energy. I always remind people the universe does not have a moral compass. And so the idea that you're bound by this, duality is just your jump off point. And when people get real and they realize that, well, how is it possible that you have a maniac like some of the megalomaniacs that have slaughtered hundreds of millions of people over the history of the world? How do they even transmute into reality? Because it all has to start and end with you. And the only reason that these psychopaths actually finally fell to their imminent death was due to the fact they stopped believing their bullshit. And so the truth is, how much do you believe in what you're perceiving as your reality? And that becomes the truth to all things. And if you can change that in the frame of pure consciousness enveloping your whole brain, then anything's possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I do my best to not have too many steadfast beliefs, because everything's shifting so much. I believe that we can dream the impossible dream. I do believe that we can create whatever the mind can conceive and believe. But as far as I believe that we need sleep, right? I believe that the human body requires movement. I believe that we require water. I also believe that we can manipulate energy and go beyond that. We're not there right now, but with various practices, I think we can go beyond. I mean, fasting, I've proved that to myself already, that I can sustain myself without food and water. And so,
What was your longest stint on that one?
I've done 61 hours on dry fast, which is nothing.
Wow.
And then, and I've done 17 days on juice, fresh squeezed juice.
That's impressive. That's really amazing. That's awesome. It again, perception. It really comes down to that, because most people want to believe that. And I get a lot of my friends or students, they start off with that, and then I go, look, you want to get clear, let's reset you, start some fasting. That's starvation. What are you talking about? No. when you understand it and you tap into the practices that I teach you for the internal alchemy, you make breatharian look like amateur hour. And then you start going into the chemistry. Within 72 hours, you're as high as AF because of the amount of energy surging and how pure your access is. And so all of a sudden, and you can measure it too, because there's no atrophy. There's hypertrophy. There's not you don't lose muscle tissue. It depends on if you excessively push yourself and start exercising every day, like for minutes on end. I would say that you're going to push the packet and you could potentially lose some muscle tissue, but it's not enough. I mean, I've proven this over 30 years. Well, really 40, because I was doing that when I was in my early teens. I got obsessed with bodybuilding for a brief minute there for about 8 or 10 years. And you can eat 800 calories, and I used to do it, 800 calories a day, and be as strong as AF, strong as anything. I mean, some of my biggest lifts before I gave up on what I thought was the be-all or end-all power, strength. Well, I was getting up there. I mean, I don't even want to, 500, 800-pound, deadlifts, squats, that kind of stuff. And that was on one meal a day. 1 meal a day. But, when you have a chemical fun factory and you're a teenager, and a lot of the kids these days want to just go, you know what? I want to get strong and big, and I've watched social media for months on end, and the answer is, steroids. No. When if you're even the answer is not hormone replacement therapy. Unfortunately, I mean, a lot of people have been sold on that, and look, you can get in at certain angles. I've known a lot of people over the last 30 years that started off in the anti-aging category and work with a lot of the big celebrities. And over time, you start to understand from fasting that you can reset your whole nervous system. You can reset the ecosystem within your body and double those numbers. If you go fasting for 3 days, your testosterone will go down, and then it'll jump up 2 to 3 times what you normally produce. Same as being exposed to temperature, hot or cold. You can manipulate your growth hormone levels. And, we do this within Taoism, go into high temperature, low temperature, and alter that with the qi. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm not surprised at anything. So when you tell me these incredible things, I'm embracing it because I know it's real. I know it's true. All the stuff that you put out, all the stuff that you teach people is profound stuff. And so many people will come across yourself and go, no, that's not possible. That guy was born that way. He's just a genetic freak.
Right.
And because, I mean, it's the perception is I'm going to buy into the cycle of Western lifestyle and ride and die by, a government-funded cycle, which is all fast foods. Because how can you offer a $1 meal? It doesn't exist. It's being funded by other resources to create that drive-through $1 meal with your favorite, crack in the box, or, the golden arches, or whatever it is that you're into. That is the seed of your dysfunction. Let's just lube you up with seed oil and see how long it takes before your mitochondria is denigrated to a point where your just whole body explodes.
Yeah, I mean, this is our biggest problem here right now is the food supply, and that's what replicates our eyeballs and the chi, or the energy that we take in, the soil. It really goes down to where those foods are grown. But you're right, all that stuff is subsidized. It's subsidized by our tax dollars for big business, and this is the truth. And then they try and say that organic food doesn't make a difference. Well, it does make a huge difference. There's many studies over the years in Asia, in a small amount of acreage, less than an acre, can make more food than 40 acres here in the United States can, grown commercially. So just grown organically. It's all about the soil, productivity of the soil.
So let me ask you, you must be, super excited that you're dodging Roundup pretty much all day, every day. Even when you look at something that is told to you by this little label that's got a sticker on it that it's organic, that you got to question in your mind. I mean, I read the auras of stuff. I don't go on face value of what I perceive. When I read the energy and it's able to be validated by me at that energetic level, then I'm gonna pass it as a go. But in most cases, this organic stuff is a fast. You just buy a label and you tell you. I mean, you've got to. And I'll ask you. You probably know this better than anyone. The stuff coming out of Mexico, is it really a standard of organic? I mean, or Peru, or all these places around the world that are clearly verging on, if not a third world country, and you're telling me they have a standard to tell me the difference between an organic and a commercial product. You know what I mean?
Well, if companies like Kraft and Pepsi-Cola can create certifications around organics, then obviously it's been adulterated. So what I tell my clients is move in the direction, work with your local farmers as much as possible, as best as possible. Source your food, whether it's mail order, from high quality farms and people that don't grow with pesticides. The fact of the matter is pesticides and herbicides are in the water table, they're in the air, and so they do transfer. But you definitely want to go in the direction of higher quality always and forever. And for right now, there are some certifications that have application. So, obviously biodynamic is the best, but if there's a farm down the street still using glyphosate, the potential for cross-contamination is there. But do the best you can and move in that direction. There's 37 or more regulatory bodies for organics. Oregon TILF is one of the highest, right? Quality assurance is another high one. USDA organics is only 3 years, no pesticides. True organics are composting and fallowing. And so when you're sourcing foods, you definitely want to work with the farmers directly as much as possible. And then just because some boxed processed foods in the store or at the health food store has organic doesn't necessarily mean it's good for you either. You want as much unprocessed foods, farmer direct, grass fed, as much as possible. And then, because the food supply has been messed up, then you add to it antibiotics, vaccines. People don't realize this, but every vaccine manufacturer out there in the world is a convicted felon, right?
I love this. I shouldn't be laughing about it because I mean the biggest, and I mentioned this many years ago. The biggest fraud in the history of the world is about to unfold before our very eyes, and I believe between the two of us we have a very similar viewpoint. That's taken place, and we're kind of still living it a little bit right now. It's
industry and business is going very well, but I do see the writing on the wall. The systems are collapsing as well. Medicine is some of the guys, some of the doctors have started clout chasing my videos now, and they're clout chasing me because medicine's becoming more and more irrelevant, right? And people know that now. Mind you, obviously, the populace is spending money on pharmaceutical drugs and seeing doctors. However, it's short-lived because people have the internet. They can find other healthy people, and they know that the drugs are no longer working for them, or they killed their grandparents in the nursing homes, or so they're or a lot of nurses work with me as well because they see what's happening in the hospitals. They see the truth. And then they go on the internet and they find people that are doing holistic health and talking about different things than the mainstream. And so nurses have been following me for a very long time. And so because the systems are defunct. You talked about midwifery and having your children at home. I had my son at home as well. I worked with a nurse. She had to quit because she was working in the maternity wings of the hospitals. And the doctors were terrible with the women, pushing them, slicing them open, C-sections, making sure they got back out on the golf course because it's time to go. This baby's got to come out, right? And so this is, this is hardcore abuse. And so,
And they pay for it too. They pay for it. I mean, the average birth, I'm familiar with, like probably $20,000 or $30,000. That's what it's going to cost. Someone's paying.
Yep. Well, usually the taxpayers, because it's subsidized through the insurance companies or through the medical industry or what have you. It's all a big game. It's all a big shell game.
Well, yeah. I mean, you probably use similar things, but when I work with my wife, I'm not even going to call it work. When I embrace and support her through her experience of bringing one of our children into the world, she goes, I just take her into a deep trance and boom, she doesn't feel anything. And she just like, anywhere between, 30 to 45 minutes, maybe an hour, and we're over and done with Caputo. Let's get on with the magical mystery of this incredible being that's now another grandmaster teaching me a different access to empathy and evolution. Really, that's what children are all about. But I mean, that's the part. And I've had midwives stand back and look, and they're like, "How do you even do that?" Well, it's all energy. Everything is everything is energy. That's all it is. That's the beginning and end of all things. As it's been stated quite clearly, it cannot be created or destroyed. This is sort of like fleeting sort of words that come out of a lot of, it's like this rhetoric that's coming out right now, and everyone gets into astral plane travel, out of body experiences. It's very exciting. I'm sort of teaching a lot of people these inner alchemy access points to get to this higher ascension. And it's like it's only conceptual until it's not. And so a lot of people just ramble on and on about it. They've read a couple of books, and I think it's exciting because everyone has a starting point, but then they have this perceived idea. And once you shift into what someone would perceive as a 5-dimensional reality, that changes everything. And your perception is your perception. It's not my perception. It's not what I've experienced. It's not what I've generated as one facet of the diamond, that we are all the same consciousness. That's my perception. So what you see on the other side is going to be your experience. So when someone goes, I've hit it, I've hit the 5D, I'm in the other side, I'm seeing all these things, it's made up of certain realms, and a mente is the Akashic records, and I mean, this is very popular, and I sound kind of a little, I'm a little, my personality's playing right now, because a lot of people just read off this stuff and they're not experiencing it. And I want them to experience it, yet they're trapped in this Hollywood version of it. And the Hollywood version is so vanilla and bland compared to what your potential really is. And so people start there and they get caught in it. And then when they get to a certain point, they end up coming back around and going, okay, maybe I was just sort of like chanting it away. I was telling myself, tell yourself the truth, not what you want to hear. And so that cycle continues to go on. And, that's the power of alternative, in my perception, alternative healing. Because, most of the people that students or clients or whatever, they're either medical doctors, Chinese medicine doctors, functional medicine doctors, chiropractors, healers, massage therapists, herbalists, because they all come back to the one thing. The most powerful source of healing is the energetics. And I get it. I've seen it. I know it. And if you're able to master things like the way you've mastered herbology and the way that you access the human gene expression through your food, through your lifestyle, then you're in a whole nother ballgame. And I do believe that you have mentioned, and you do a bunch of energetics also, that I've seen somewhere.
Oh yeah. I mean, I get my body moving every day, whether it's stretching or gentle qigong or barefoot walking on the hardcore stones out here in the desert. I've got a nail bed as well. I've got I've got sometimes I do the ice bath. The pool is almost pool's pretty ready. I was in there last week. It's about 50 degrees now. It's going to go down into the 30s. And so, yeah, I use all sorts of techniques and tools. I have a sauna here as well to keep me fresh, take the electrical impingements out of my own stiffness, and just keep me clean and clear as much as possible. And, you know, one of my favorite things to do is really just go right here into the mountains and just be with the stones and the cactus. And I mean, it's pretty powerful. The energy of nature or forest bathing. To me, it's just a no brainer. The energetics of electromagnetism of grounding and sunlight, you know, and the sunlight is extremely powerful here in the desert. You know, you're in the desert as well.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I'm drawn to it. I mean, if it's 120 out here, I'll jump over. Unfortunately, only time I get sort of like a physical rash is when I drive over the border to California, but I'll do it occasionally to get to Death Valley. And when we had a peak, a historical record 2 years ago where it was 133, 134, and it's awesome. You know, or I'll hit the trails of my side by side and, you know, go to town when you're flying across the desert at, you know, 90, 100 miles an hour, just liberated. You know, if you've ridden a motorbike or you've been in a side by side, that's liberation, my friend. That's what we call true instant access to feeling alive. I don't know. It excites.
Yeah, I have bicycles, and so I love being on my bicycle. I got electric bikes here since I moved to the desert in Sedona, and yeah, just that essence of freedom, especially in the deep heat in the middle of the summer. And so yeah, for me, that, you know, those are the biggest energetics, when I can be in motion, the wind going through my hair, in the natural environment as much as possible. I lived in Los Angeles for 25 years, and I lived in Santa Monica and Venice. I didn't even bother getting in my car for the most part. I'm still 90% bike, 90% outside.
Wow.
And so when I lived there, the ocean, that's very remote nature, the Pacific Ocean that goes back out there. And so, yeah, the city is dense if you go that way, but the fact of the matter is I wanted to be around the energetics of that vast wilderness. And so I like that. You know, there's a proverb from the Native Americans. It goes something like, if you want to heal the body, go to the ocean. If you want to heal the mind, go to the mountains. If you want to heal the soul, go to the desert. And I've experienced a lot of that since I've been here in the desert. I was almost ready to move away this year, but I got grounded, and I figured I can still work on the soul, you know?
Yeah. No, I mean, I talk a lot about in my podcast the natural formations of pyramids out here. So I'll take a group out that may be doing one of my workshops or classes, and we'll go out to the formations of the pyramids, which within ancient Taoist teachings, we use that to correlate the pyramids with the constellations. And so then we start moving the energy that way. And that's why the recent discovery, very limited within China, about the pyramids and the treasure trove of pyramids throughout China. And all the tops are lopped off them. Now, generally, you know, the formation of sacred geometry in a triangle form and what that generates in relation to frequency is a little different, because the tops were lopped off the ones in China because we laid down a bagua and a grid, and we would use the star stepping magic, which I teach people. And you use the star stepping and you work with the constellations to generate certain types of energies, and you pull those in and correlate them with what's already formated here on planet Earth. So it becomes really interesting. And especially out here, I realized when my teachers said, you have to go to the desert, you must go to, you know, where I'm living right now. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I love heat because I work with that yang energy. It's really the passion of a Taoist is to take yin and yang, and the true journey is two sides of the mountain one's yin, one's yang. You walk through your journey in this natural born life to take those two and merge them as one and create all things. So it's a place of being. So you go past this polarizing idea. There is a difference between the two, but that comes from, your perception and death of duality in of itself. And when you really start to immerse yourself in that, holy moly, all of a sudden miracles start taking place. They happen real fast. But the pyramids out here are crazy because people are like, I never even thought about it. And when you go out there, I'll draw up a grid and people go, whoa, this is crazy. This is mind-blowing. This is like I'm standing on top of like a fire hydrant of energy. Yeah, because it's all energy. And you just, the stuff I'm teaching people is thousands and thousands of years old that millions of people have done before them. And then you just get to ride the tidal wave of the imprinting of all that energy that's already taken place. So it's like, whoa, this is crazy. Yes, this is real.
Yeah, I used to live at the Chapel of the Holy Cross in Sedona, and very beautiful chapel building, but it backed up to the Twin Buttes, and there was a huge pyramid right outside of the back of my house, and then it triangulated with Cathedral Rock and Bell Rock, which are pyramids within themselves. And so Sedona is a very powerful place.
I was about to ask you about that because that's got a large sort of like alternative healing community.
People are drawn to it just because of the energy, and yes, all sorts of healers and shamans and charlatans. Everybody shows up there.
I mean that's the funny part. You get into this place where people talk about energy. You mentioned charlatans, and it happens all the time. But you can't punish people that truly believe they're accessing a certain frequency until they realize they're not. Then they become charlatans. Initially, they could be. It's their simulation. It's their reality, and it only comes with confirmation. It's like you have to confirm what you're experiencing is true to you, and then of course, what does it mean to everyone around you? So are you really generating and cultivating psychic ability, or are you just in your own little vacuum and you're just sort of like
phoning it in?
Yeah. So there's a lot of you call them charlatans out there.
Well, there's some legit people too, but it attracts. It attracts. I mean, I've been in the healing community in Los Angeles and then in Sedona, for years. I think we're all in the same boat. It's just varying degrees of understanding.
Yeah.
And so we're all just waking up or walking each other home or coming back to that singularity, that oneness. And so, I got to watch my own judgments, to be honest. And so.
Well, it's the beautiful part is that's in of itself. I always tell people you want to become enlightened or raise your consciousness. It has nothing to do with erasing your personality. You are given that. That's your signature personality. That's for you to simulate and enjoy this humanness that you've been given. And the powerful part is mastering the ability to put that on the side. Like what I teach people is take your emotions and tell them to sit over there, roll over and play dead. And then you access ascension. Then you access consciousness. And then you can come back to regular programming on Netflix when you're done with whatever it is that you want to do. And when you sit in that frequency longer, you stay in that level of consciousness longer, your perception changes, and you might gravitate from what normally would be just the sum of your life experiences to polarizing that with more your divine access. And that's just a choice, but you can still do both. That's the misconception I find, is that people tend to go, you've got to die inside. There has to be this death of your very viewpoint of reality. And that's why the feeling is so critical. When I share the training that I give people, it starts with a visual audible experience, and you create a kinesthetic charge that validates the knowing. So, what you see and what you hear is the beginning. And then what you feel is the knowing, right? If you feel it, you know it. And that comes from the singular, the truth teller, the heart. And that's 1,000% accurate for your well-being, your reality. You're going to get 100%, 1,000% messaging that is going to be intuitively accurate every single time. Then you start wanting to get into higher levels of start reading other people's energetic fields and then what's really going on outside of your own journey. But your heart will give you 1,000% validation every single time, the truth to what's necessary for your journey. And so then that changes as you become more sensitive. And the misconception for chi or energy in of itself is that when you get a higher level of ascension, the feeling dissipates because it's such a high frequency. That's a fallacy. When you develop your dantians and you really are able to sit with that energy and move it as a palpable, tangible thing, it becomes very thick. It's not an ethereal, high frequency that you cannot feel anymore. You're out of it. Because, when we go to out of body or astral plane traveling, as people put it, soul projection, Shen projection as a Taoist, you start going to a level where this is your tuning fork. This is the tuning fork to your reality. It's a simulator. Without it, all the things that you perceive, whatever you're doing, whether you're doing ayahuasca, DMT, whatever it is, this is still the tuning fork. How far you go out into your own perception of reality in other realms, other dimensions, whatever it is, this is still simulating it all. This is the record. And so then that becomes real to you. And so people are, well, I'm out of my body. I can't feel anything, but you are feeling something. Explain it to me. And when they go down to explaining it to where did that come from? That still came from the seat of this anchor that starts in this realm, and then you go up to other dimensions. So it's kind of like an interesting starting point for a lot of people. But knowing the feeling is the validation, because when you hit those sort of levels of brain waves, for example, if I'm teaching channeling, you get to 40 hertz and above in a gamma brainwave frequency. So you're doing 40 plus. I've gone up to 120. I would say I haven't measured anything above that, but I'd say I've gone up to 200. And you feel like you're in a sauna and you're at 280 degrees and you're channeling direct source information and it's coming right to you. And that power is available to everyone. It's just like getting to that level instead of like getting in your head where you're compartmentalizing things. If you're thinking, you're not knowing. If you're knowing, you're feeling. And when you just make it that simple, then you can start going, oh, okay, let me use this tuning fork. And that could be my validation, because some people tend to go, well, I can't see angels. I can't hear voices. These are all sensory perceptions. And people go, well, you can't do this and you can't do that. That's false. Your imagination is the seed of your sensory perception, and that starts there. So how many levels of that, how many senses you acquire is up to you and your development. And that's where qigong becomes such a critical component, because qigong in of itself, it's a fairly new practice within, sort of any sort of like Chinese sort of like inner workings of inner alchemy. But let's just use qigong. That's moving energy with your breath. Qigong is moving energy with your mind. And so the multidimensional concept for most people is, hey, guess what? All this is happening at once in multi dimensions, and you just have to match your frequency with the frequency of whatever it is that you want. That is absolutely beautiful. It's a great way to start, but you can be in all dimensions at once, depending upon how developed you are in your sensory perception. And that's what qigong does. It projects the same amount of energy, frequency, vibration in all dimensions at the same time. So it gives you a whole new refreshing view to all those psychologists out there that claim that your 14 personalities, your ego states, and the fact that you are incapable as a human being to multitask. It's not possible. Sorry, that's a fallacy. Because when you ascend to that level, as you understand within energetics, neurology per se, the soft technology of the nervous system, would be bound by the neurologist's neuroscience viewpoint that certain things are not possible. You don't have the innervated nervous system within your brain to feel the third eye. It doesn't exist. Yet once you start pulping, as qigong is a baseline of fantastic miracles, you can feel parts of your body that are not sympathetically innervated, that would not be possible on the chart of physicality, biology, physiology, because there are nerve endings that would give you a representation to say that you could get a signal to your brain to represent that you're feeling something. Yet energetics is connecting with those 50 trillion cells, so that then you have access to be the maestro and the conductor of that energetics, the 0.07 millivolts of untapped potential in relation to energetics. And that's all. It all starts with the qigong. I sound like I'm preaching, but anyway. It's fascinating because I love watching everyone come to the same place, and I'm always open to another viewpoint of how you get there, because there's no right or wrong way. And if anyone's telling you there is a right or wrong way, then you run for the hills.
I have a disdain for people on the internet saying my way or the highway, because I see that a lot, especially with diet paradigms, or it's got to be this way or it's got to be that way. Or even worse, they say they're talking about all the good stuff, but they're not talking about their steroids that they're consuming or selling you on the back end.
Yeah. I mean, even though, well, and that's the part that I think we were talking about before the podcast is, most people, honestly, on face value, would look at you and go, impossible. No way. Over 50, bounce a dime off your abs. No, sorry, it's not happening. Yeah, he was just born that way. He's just a good-looking genetic freak that just has that. He just has it. And, I can tell you 1,000%, and then I've dealt with all different types of people that are naturally gifted to people that are abusing external substances to create a fantasy physique, that you are 1,000% natural and you can obtain the elixir that Troy is offering. You just have to follow the path. You've got to follow some type of valuing this vessel to some degree. That's how I see it. I mean, you tell me what you think.
Well, I mean, that's basically my whole practice. My whole daily practice is making sure that, I feel, good enough. I'm not bogged down by metabolic processes, carrying, too much weight. My liver's clogged, my brain's clogged with too much garbage in there as well. And that I can function, flow freely, and ultimately be of service to others, right? Be friendly, benevolent, peaceful. That's my big goal in life, is peace and harmony. And so, because I've experienced plenty of the opposite.
Yeah. Well, this is a great question. I'll ask this for the audience. 3 classic ones. Let's talk about metabolic disorder. What would your prescription be for fatty liver, insulin resistance, and the classic 3 trios that kill everyone, and high triglycerides? What would be the Troy formula for that?
Well, I mean, ultimately, I'd get people into fasting. Ultimately, now that may not be the best jump off and entry point. So depending on a person's biomechanics and their mobility level, I'd get them in a walking program, get them moving their body systematically. I'd say 45 to 50 minutes, 5 or 6 times a week minimum, right? Get them in a walking program so they're burning the actual sugar that's in their body.
Beautiful.
Make sure that they're optimizing their sleep hygiene, making sure their room's clean, turning off the Wi-Fi, darkening out the rooms, getting good sleep, getting to bed at a reasonable hour after the sun goes down, anywhere, no later than 10. trying to get 8 to 9 hours, minimum, then definitely switching to high quality organic food, really legitimate farmer direct food as much as possible, and high quality water, the bare minimum, a reverse osmosis system. And so ideally, I'd like to also look at their breathing mechanics and challenge them to 100 days of the stork walk, which opens up the diaphragm and reprograms the breathing mechanics. Overall respiration is directly related to cellular respiration. And cellular respiration is what handles all the metabolic processes, et cetera, et cetera. And so, but again, even something as simple as the stork walk can be very advanced for people. So back to the walking, getting some sunlight, getting grounded into the earth. The idea is start wrapping their heads around that, because there's no real need for the fancy stuff. I mean, I've got a sauna here. You can join a gym that has a sauna. You can get a trainer. But again, that's advanced stuff. Some people don't have the resources for that, but everybody can walk. Everybody can pay attention to their sleep. You can start wrapping your head around water and food, because that's what makes up, the human body experience. That's what replicates your eyeballs and spinal cord, et cetera. And so, eventually I'd like to check in with their thinking, like what programmed you to get as unhealthy as you are right now? Because that's really where the rubber meets the road. Mind is an embodied process. And so we are all ultimately mind, all of our ideas. That's why I try and stay fluid, and not have too many steadfast beliefs, right? Mm-hmm. Because I don't want to get caught in one conceptual idea. And so I want to be open and in the moment. And I know that the media is tons of programming. I know that my brain is picking up on the media that impregnates other people's consciousness. I know that billboard signage and trickling down information through the internet is still like TV, right? It's programming into me. And so taking my ideas, also using my own language and affirmations to reprogram myself. I love and approve of myself. I forgive and release the past. When I can get those ideas into my head, I practice, meditation. Now, I've been prescribing meditation to my friends and clients and people that follow me on the internet. And that's a tough sell. Not everybody wants to sit down and meditate. But for me to be presentable and to be of service and not be a jerk, right, in the world, these practices are necessary for me. That's why I've had some level of expertise in them. Because I put them into practice for long periods of time, and I am living proof, right? People want to know the scientific proof for all these natural medicines. Well, my laboratory is my human being body, and science is the methodology of observation. And so I've been observing what I've been practicing for the past 30 years, and here are my results, right? This is the color of my skin, the vibrancy of my eyes and my hair, the dexterity of my tissues, at approaching 60, and I'm not the only one. There are plenty of people, but if one can do it, we all can do it. And so and again, just like any martial arts master, they're going to teach you punch, block, kick. If you come in to you're a white belt, punch, block, kick, wax on, wax off, and you're there until you get some proficiency. Right. And it takes 100,000, 300,000, 1 million times to get a black belt. And the black belt is when the belt gets dirty, right? Because you've been showing up for so long. Right. So punch, block, kick, hydration, nutrition, sleep, movement, nature, sunlight, forgiveness, gratitude in our relationships. We're in relationship with everyone. These are basic fundamental principles. And so, the more we get back to the basics, the better off we are. I do believe legacy and purpose defined for a man is very important. I do believe women having children is enough. And I don't think we allow that focus really because of the society we lived in. And feminism, second wave, 1973, Gloria Steinem worked with the CIA, let the men make their own food. What happened to the food supply? Who are the natural nurturers and nourishers of the children? Women. So that's enough of a legacy for a woman, unless she's lost and she doesn't have children, or she's post children. Then definitely finding a purpose for them. But men, they need a direction to go in, purpose, legacy. And so my new coaching program is Fit and Free Legacy Method. And so getting the legacy in place, because people ask me often, what is the secret diet and exercise plan, right? I wrote a book called Ripped at 50, A Journey to Self-Love. And they want to know like it's a gimmick or it's a trick. And it's all these principles applied, these basic fundamental principles. And so, and legacy, when you have a legacy, you have a dream. I'm going to climb Mount Everest in my lifetime, right? I'm going to train for that and I'm going to do that. So then your day-to-day decisions based on, oh, is this pile of food going to help me climb Mount Everest? Is this relationship over here, is that going to get me to Mount Everest, or is it going to distract me, right? Is going to bed at a reasonable hour so my body can repair itself so I can get back to my training going to help me get to Mount Everest? So defining the legacy from the heart's desire. We all have innate gifts. We have our effortless genius. All of us are good at something. And so when you fine tune that which you love to do from the heart, and then you program the mind with the heart's desire, the problem is in society is everyone wants to dream it up in the head what's going to make money, and then it's all a head trip, and that's usually where you're not going to find fulfillment. You're going to find pain and anguish if you're just doing things for money. And so I help men redesign that and then build a lifestyle around that, and that's much easier because it's all coming from what they desire. They're very clear on what they desire. Instead of me just saying, oh yeah, you need to eat organic food. You need to move your body every day. You need to get some pure water, because they're not going to get the pure water if it's not for them.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's very powerful, my friend. It's really interesting that you correlate that the brain and the heart, and understanding that synergistically from an energetic perspective. As a Taoist, we sync those three energy centers, upper, middle, lower, dantian. And so moreover, when that's synchronized, and I kind of sound like a broken record because these sort of indigenous ancient practices have been around thousands of years, but someone discovers the human nervous system in the last 30, and then it's put in a category that a lot of people become familiar with, a certain specific person that calls it a coherent sort of experience. And so then all of a sudden now it's like, oh, it's that guy. Well, actually, no. He's perceived it a certain way. He has a great understanding of the human body, and this is the digested version of that. And like anything, your truth is only what you believe. And so it comes down to what you're capable of and the actual validation of that. So when you talk about the power of how your heart's desire has to match what's going on here, that's all absolutely has to do with energetics. Then it ripples over into physiology and then psychology. And then you meet the three of them together to create the perfect, dream life that you want.
Yeah, I like to say your ideas have no ballast in reality unless they're embodied. If you're not a living testament to the talking head ideas, because talk is cheap, right? And we see a lot of that on the internet. So if you're not living that what you're talking about, it has no real ballast in reality. It's just another idea. And that's what I also tell my clients. Look, if I give you an idea and it doesn't work, throw it away. Or Bruce Lee actually said it best. He said, study with everyone, take what's useful, discard the rest, make it your own. Boom. That's, and also because of perception and linguistics and understanding of semantics, somebody can say one thing, or a teacher or a master can say one thing and it doesn't penetrate. Somebody else says the exact same thing, presented it in a different way, and there's an epiphany. And so, and or the person might not have been ready for that information at the time.
Yeah.
Take, for example, studying yoga back in the day in my 20s. They're like, oh, this twist and it wrings out the liver and does this to the organs. And I'm like, whatever, I'm like, it's just a twist, right? Now that I'm older and I can feel my body and feel my organs, and I'm like, oh, this has some serious power, right? And so the more, that ancient practice, and even the qigong, especially with the nervous system, it regulates the nervous system. And so, and I'm finding that refinement, and the more refined and calm that I can be, again, I'm more at service, or I'm more ready to maybe defend myself, or more, I can respond more as opposed to reacting. So I can be much more in that, that the power of neutrality, right? Or that Zen element, and I can respond.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that what we call it in Taoism is called Wu Wei. Effortless action, effortless effort. You know what I mean? You just flow. Nothing. And I mean, you could really hinge that on the foundation of, nothing can be created or destroyed in of itself. That sort of ripples over into Wu Wei, because it just happens effortlessly. And we always lean on that within the scripture. And we talk about let the man who's never left his village, let him know that he's seen the world. And that's really all to do with perception. And so then you start validating it with the feeling. And so that synchronicity that you speak of, that's so powerful with the heart and the brain, is absolutely relevant when you synchronize the energy. And then moreover, the neural network that's taken place that people want to validate over the last 30 years. Okay, now it's real. Forget about the Taoist practices or Hindu practices or indigenous practices been around 10,000 years. But now we're validating it because we've discovered the neural network within the brain and the heart. There's a correlation, and there's the same amount of neurites within the heart that you have in the brain. So you have a little little brain in your heart. And so this is how you synchronize the two. And you use the mirror neurons to replicate at the base of your brain, to replicate whatever it is that you perceive. So you synchronize those up and you get this epiphany. All of a sudden, whatever you've sat down on a shrink's couch for the last 20 years, paying them $500 an hour, and it was just a hypothesis, a concept, just airing your grievances and getting nowhere, but you felt good because you had someone to sound off on. When you release it from your heart, it becomes reality. Mm-hmm. And so that power that you're talking about, that inner working, then it goes from heart to brain. Because I always remind people the brain is nothing more than a projector. You want information that comes from here. The brain is nothing. And then it syncs that message from that to the parasympathetic down into the gut. And then you tune yourself to a gut feeling that is an expression that everyone has used for as long as you can remember. I got this gut. I don't like that guy. I got this gut feeling. And more likely than not, you're going to be correct. But if your energetics are off a little bit, and you've spoken on in relation to qigong, when you regulate your nervous system, your meridians, the information, or Hindus would call it chakras, when you regulate those energy centers, the information is accurate. The information is real. And so all of a sudden that gut feeling is 1000% accurate, that you can discern or confirm whatever your reality is through that synchronicity. And, that's what I do. Just so if you ever have people that are struggling with meditation, I developed a little side plug. I developed an app that does exactly that. And you can measure your results on a day-to-day basis. So the first time you use it, it's about mastering your emotions and regulating your energy system, your energy centers. So there's over 2 years worth of material, but I tell people the first 9 weeks will master anyone's basic overview of reality. You want to master your emotions and get charge of your journey to the Wizard of Oz, the pinnacle of all things, whatever you want to create. You do this, but the first day you do it, you get to validate it. So a lot of people, I think the biggest issue that you may come up with when you come to meditation is people like, I don't have time for it, and what's it going to do for me? I mean, we're it's sitting still or looking inside myself sounds like a little bit of a fast. I need something more external. Get me some weight. Let me move something. Let me do something that I can now bridge the gap and go, I spent 3 weeks doing that. I lost 5 pounds of body fat. I gained strength. This is my validation. Whereas an internal practice, like a starting point of like meditation or stuff that I teach, internal alchemy, it's a different ball game. It's like, how does someone measure that? And well, sensory perception on a daily basis and being able to measure it, which is the great thing. So within the system that I use, which is all ancient Taoist stuff, use a visual audible experience, creating the kinesthetic charge that validates it. So it becomes instantly real to you. So you hit play, and all of a sudden you've had 5 pina coladas, 10 days to the Bahamas, and a full body massage. And you're like, how the hell did this happen? Because all I did was show up. That's the nervous system, baby. That's the nervous system. So the sound permeates the vagus nerve, and you're off to the races. And then everything that you see and hear becomes validated. So then you start to express this kinesthetic charge. Your brainwave starts to increase, where you're now accessing a gamma brainwave, which in all intensive purposes means full consciousness. You're enveloping the whole brain. So now you access theta and alpha at the same time. So you're now able to alter the programming that we speak of, that you teach people how to do in here, and make it real like this. And so the system that I use is you validate it every day. So you can go and spend, because I appreciate that time is the most valuable commodity any human being has, because it's a made up realm of man thing. Time itself, time and space is a perception. It's just created in the construct of how someone sold you your reality is supposed to be. But because people start there, hey, you need to validate your time. And so each day it's 27 minutes, but that 27 minutes, you can walk away from that after the first time, go out and test it. You want to battle test what you've just created? Go and get in a confrontation. I just an example. Get in a confrontation and watch your ability to call in that energy, frequency, and vibration that you just replicated through your nervous system, and you will downgrade it and putting yourself in a calm state instantaneously. And you're like, holy crap, how did I do that? It's already there. You've already created it. So that neural network, that pathway was generated. You're exposed to the visual audible experience, creating that charge that then becomes real to you, and you can test it at any point. And so then all of a sudden you master your emotions, as you should be. You know, it's some people kind of get it. It's like, that sounds so young, so manly. You want to master something. Well, you need to be the master, keeper, creator of all things that you are perceiving. And so that comes from that nervous system response. And I find it amazing, because people will use it and they'll get like, oh, I did a physical healing, I manifested $1 million, whatever it is. It's all got to do with signature frequency. Everything we speak of is all got to do with energy, frequency, and vibration. And when you start to get into that place where you can feel your manifestation take place, because you align it and you're now creating it, it becomes real to you. And once it's real to you, you put out in the universe what is equal to, meets something equal to or greater than, and it becomes real, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. Well, you're putting words to, my visceral experience. But brother, I've got my next appointment in 5 minutes. So
okay. Well, I look forward to seeing you again soon, brother, and maybe catching up, maybe have you out here, or I'll make a pilgrimage out there. It's very, very exciting. Sharing the information, getting it out there, having people understand that you are not a unicorn. You're very real, and that the ability to harness and create your reality from all the things that you teach people is only a click away, for especially within social media. And I just love your message. I love what you're putting out there, and you're changing people's lives through an understanding of what it takes. And I mean, I was going to get into epigenetics, but we can save that for another time. But that's in of itself the environment, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, and basically that's that. It's a large component of what I teach. I mean, we're given our genetics, but they will express itself or not express itself depending on the nutrition we feed it and the environment that we set up for ourselves. And so, lowering your stress levels or getting into environments like I talked about, living in Santa Monica on the beach, or living next to the mountains here in Scottsdale, or up in Sedona, if you provide yourself with the proper environment, your genes have the ability to express itself at a greater level, not just from what you were given. And then obviously feeding yourself the dense nutrition that you're required. Excuse me. And or if you understand herbalism, and you can use herbalism to raise your frequency and vibration, or change things, tweak them, clean out your colon, your liver, etc. And so epigenetics is very real, and I think you see with people like yourself, you can change the energy from the gifts that you've been given.
Yeah. I mean that's it in a nutshell. Haha. I mean, it really is. It really is understanding that it all comes from three ingredients, which is the controlling factor of your reality: thought, feeling, and an emotion. That's it. Starts and ends with that. In when you realize that's the simulation of all things, a thought, feeling, and emotion, then now we go off to the races. Now it's time to create. And then you use the delivery system, however you evoke those thoughts, feelings, and emotions, and what that actually transmutes into in your reality, from a physicality, from a mental, emotional, from a spiritual level. It's all encompassing. And that's why I find your messaging and being so free and so, and I use that word, I don't use that word lightly, authentic, because so many people just abuse it. It becomes sort of like a corny throwaway. And I'm only going to use that when I can actually validate it as being true. And your authenticity is a beautiful thing. The last thing I would say is when people, they go, oh, well, how do you want to get to this state of consciousness? Oh, well, it must be love, right? No, actually, love is very subjective, and love is sort of like a baseline. When I look at gradients of turning the gears up, it starts with love, then it goes to gratitude, and then ultimately being one with all things. When you start to realize I can go and give you a compliment and you become grateful, or I can give you $1 and you can become grateful. It's an instant access of that emotional state that is very easy to obtain by anybody. Whereas love in of itself is sort of like this subjective thing where I believe love is, my children, my wife, and Joe Smith down the street believes it's razor blades and bunny rabbits. It doesn't matter. It's a baseline, but you can your consciousness goes, okay, let me start there. And then I don't get all hokey on the hallmark stuff. And then the gratitude raises it up. And then, of course, when you come back to your perception of love, it's more universal, and you've changed it due to your own experiences that, hang on, I used to think love was this, and now it's this type of thing. But again, brother, thank you for your time. I'm really grateful that you shared it with my audience. I look forward to catching up with you soon and doing more of this. And great things to come. But yeah, if you want to think about, I'm going to put together a consciousness expo here in Vegas for next year, and I would love to invite you now on that magical journey, because it's gathering fast. There's just so many incredible people that I'm being introduced to, and the message needs to get out there. It has to be. You got to shake the tree a little bit.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity, brother, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah. All right, brother. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. God bless. God bless.
Thanks. And I am your humble servant and Sifu Taoist Master Sun Quinn, and I will see you on the next one, guys.